Hey, just in time for the holidays, what if you didn't have to worry about any of that credit card debt? If you're feeling stuck making the minimum payments and you don't want to have to put Christmas on a credit card, we can help at savewithconrad.com. We routinely help our listeners save hundreds of dollars a month. Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad the Mortgage Guy, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good, Connie. Thanks. It's mixed feelings today because what we're going to talk about and so forth. It's just, but life must go on.
We're going to be celebrating the late, great Bob Caudle today. He lived a long life, 95 years young. And I thought, you know what? Let's phone a friend and let's do a proper tribute. We don't normally do guests here on Grilling JR, but this is worthy of an exception. I want to welcome into the show my friend and yours from PWInsider, Mr. Mike Johnson. Mike, how are you, man?
Hey, Conrad. Hey, JR. Thank you for having me. I wish it was under happier circumstances, but I'm very humbled and very honored to be here to talk about Bob Caudle for a little bit. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for jumping on, man. Jim, I guess we should start with you. Like, you know, when you think about Mr. Caudle's legacy in professional wrestling, what is that? And what did he mean to you early in your career? How can you sort of encapsulate a career like that?
It's hard, Conrad, quite frankly. Such a long and illustrious career. Bob was a model of consistency and was as nice a man as you'll ever meet. I just loved him. I wish if the wrestling business had more people like Bob Caudle in it, it'd be a much better place. He was just a wonderful human being. And I loved him. I really did. He was a credit to the business, and he never tried to get the spotlight. He was all about getting the talent over and the angles over, the stories over, and I don't know. He's just Bob Caudle was what was right about the pro wrestling business. He was just amazing. I loved him. I wish everybody had his attitude, his aptitude.
You know, Mike, one of the great things about Bob Caudle is he brought such credibility to the broadcast. You know, he came across as if he were a legitimate reporter. He wasn't necessarily, you know, there for entertainment. He was the straight man. Am I saying that right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about his background, when he first started in professional wrestling, I think it was WRAL TV in Raleigh. He was already the weatherman there. You got the picture of him when he was doing the children's show, and he was doing the late news. So it was just, you know, an extension of his responsibilities for the station. So by him having those roles in regular news and being such an important person on the local broadcast, it added immediate credibility to professional wrestling. But like what Jim Ross talked about, you know, the way that he approached it, he never tried to make himself bigger than the business. He never had like a bombastic approach. Like, and you know, he wasn't like the carnival barker. Like, you know, like a Vince McMahon might have been a little bit over the top, and there were other personalities from different eras who were over the top. But Bob was someone who just, so almost similar to Lance Russell, where he just brought his legitimacy and he brought this sort of aura of these things are playing out before my eyes, and this is a real thing that's happening, and this is a real sport. And I think just by doing that and having that sort of kindly uncle approach to it, where you felt like you were bringing someone into your home who's talking to you, not speaking down to you, not yelling at you, not trying to sell you something, not trying to be a carnival barker or a carny or, you know, beat things over the head, just sort of speaking to you about what you're watching and experiencing it with you in real time. That created a kinship that Bob had with the audience that's unlike anything I think, you know, a Michael Cole might get the chance to have today. It's a different world. It's a different era. I think, you know, guys like Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross, and I'm not saying that because Jim's with us, we're kind of the last of that line of, you feel like this person is your friend because they're experiencing and they're watching and they're broadcasting pro wrestling as you're watching it. And I think when you have that sort of bond with the audience, it lasts forever, to the point that I know Bob was very taken aback and shocked years later at the conventions how in love with him everybody was and how indebted to him everybody felt. Like, Bob had a hard time wrapping his head around that. But I just think he came off with a kindness and a legitimacy that made not just what he talked about feel realistic, but made all of pro wrestling feel realistic, accentuated the athleticism, accentuated the drama without pointing out, oh, this is a show, or being tongue in cheek or making light of it. It was all, he's sort of, sort of like, when I say this, I don't want to make it sound like I'm being silly, but like Kermit the Frog was like the voice of reason as everything fell apart around him in the Muppet Show. That's kind of like what the role of the straight announcers were in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They were the ones who had to maintain the professionalism despite the chaos and the craziness and the monsters and the blood and the guts and the action. Like, they were the ones who were basically the avatar for the audience, experiencing everything.
We're talking all things Bob Caudle today, JR. And one of the things that I think Mike hit on there is there was a kindness. And I wonder, as wrestling has evolved, maybe we've got more edgier characters and, more of the Jesse Ventura types through the years. Don't you think that added so much credibility to wrestling way back in a bygone era to have someone who represented that kindness to the broadcast?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Bob, you couldn't help but gravitate to Bob. He was the kind of personality you want to ingratiate yourself with. Just a wonderful, wonderful guy. I loved him. If you were around him, you had to like him, because that's the kind of personality that he had. He just was so lovable and wonderful. I thought he was just great. He was as good a partner as I ever worked with, and I worked with some good ones. I worked with all the good ones in the last many years. But Bob Caudle was right there with the very best. I love working with him. He was just tremendous. He's going to be missed, really. He's really going to be missed.
One of the things I loved hearing from you there, Mike, was when you were talking about the love that Mr. Caudle got at conventions, and he was sort of taken aback by that. Do you think that's because that sort of fanfare doesn't really exist from a news station? I mean, your local news station broadcaster, hey, we may have grown up with them, but I don't think that people are like, hey, man, let's go pop in a tape of the old news from 1985. Like, that's not a thing. But we've all continued to consume Caudle even as adults. And that through line of we grew up with him and now we want to relive that. I don't think he probably, coming from a traditional broadcast background, maybe even considered that this is going to have a long tail, not like the local news, right?
Well, you have to think about what television was like then. They weren't even keeping tapes half the time. They were retaping over things, or they were broadcasting live. So there was no expectation of an afterlife. Like, there was, reruns were a thing, when you and I were growing up. I Love Lucy, Gilligan's Island. But before that really wasn't like the case for television. It was a one and done. Most of the stuff wasn't archived, in previous generations. What Bob, I think, was surprised was, for one, like you said, for the news, it's one and done. But when you think about this, when it was his job or JR's job or Tony Schiavone's job, you were doing that show and you were on to the next thing. Home video was in its infancy. So maybe a couple of the bigger shows, your Starrcade, your Great American Bash, would end up on home video and people would buy those or more likely rent them in the time period. But the idea of this content existing 24/7 on a streaming service like a Peacock or an HBO Max or whatever, that wasn't even in the realm of possibility. So the idea that these things would be watched over and over, no one in the entertainment industry was probably thinking about that 20, 30, 40 years ago. But you also have to think about this when it came to pro wrestling. The openness that we have now and the channels of communication that we have now, those didn't exist in Raleigh, North Carolina in the 70s. Maybe you saw Bob Caudle in town, or maybe you saw him at a show and you were lucky enough to cross paths with him or any of the wrestlers, Roddy Piper, Greg Valentine, whoever. But for the most part, these were people that lived on your television, and that was the only place where you saw them. Now, with conventions and gatherings and signings, these things happen so more often that I think there's a different way of the audience bonding with the personalities. But for Bob, and I think people of his generation who worked in Mid-Atlantic or Crockett Promotions or even the WWF, even though Bob didn't work there in the 80s, when the convention scene started popping up, it became this situation where now you were encountering people who knew everything about your career, who knew everything about you, and not in a weird stalker sort of way that we have now on social media, but in a way that was like loving and sort of giving back. And I remember going to that first Mid-Atlantic Legends convention that Greg Price founded back in 2004. And they had everybody you could think of there. Dusty, Arn Anderson, Buddy Landell, Tully Blanchard, Baby Doll, Penny Banner, all these greats. And I remember turning the corner and seeing Bob Caudle. And I got taken aback because, Bob was a big part of my childhood watching Crockett Promotions and then, getting tapes and things like that. And you'd see him in WRAL Studios as Flair and Steamboat are ripping off each other's clothes and beating the crap out of each other. But seeing Bob in person and then seeing him and David Crockett go up on stage and recreate the old Mid-Atlantic opening, it was like, man, where am I? This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And again, they were all these huge stars there. But the difference between those huge stars and Bob Caudle was Bob felt like he was one of you when you watched the show. And he felt like he was an extended family member who was bringing his love of wrestling and the importance of wrestling to your home. And he was the soundtrack the same way JR was for Monday Night Raw. Bob was the soundtrack, whether he was with Johnny Weaver or Les Thatcher or Tony Schiavone or David Crockett. He was the soundtrack for the National Wrestling Alliance and especially Mid-Atlantic Wrestling for so many decades that when you think of it, automatically you would think of Bob. The same way if you think of Memphis, you go Lance Russell and Dave Brown as much as you would think of Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee.
Hey man, this holiday season, I've been using Home Chef to channel my inner Gordon Ramsay. That's because Home Chef just teamed up with Gordon Ramsay to bring his 5-star stress-free recipes straight to your kitchen. Between school nights and busy schedules, it's never been easier to cook like a pro without the pressure. You see, Home Chef is rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. Home Chef makes cooking simple. Fresh food delivered, easy recipes to follow, and meals that actually taste great. And now with Gordon Ramsay's exclusive recipes on the Home Chef menu, you can enjoy 5-star meals without the stress. Choose from Gordon Ramsay's co-branded dishes featured across Home Chef's culinary collection, classic meal kits, and even the express options, each crafted to make you feel like you have a chef in your own kitchen. Whatever kind of day it is, classic recipes with fresh ingredients, maybe a 30-minute meal, an oven-ready tray, or just the quick microwave options, Buddy Home Chef has you covered. They've even got a dedicated family menu, which will get you those hassle-free, delicious dinners. And it's not one size fits all. Home Chef has over 30 meal options each week with choices for different diets and tastes. Plus, it's affordable. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. And right now, for a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off and free shipping on your first box. Plus, you get free dessert for life. Go right now to homechef.com/JR. That's homechef.com/JR for 50% off your first box and free dessert for life. That's homechef.com/JR. Of course, you must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Jim, when did you first meet Bob Caudle?
Oh gosh, it's been a while. Ask that question. It's been a while.
Would you have met him through some of the joint shows that Watts was doing with JCP, or would it have happened before that?
I think it would have happened before that, Connie. To be honest with you, but he and I always hit it off. We had a good chemistry from the beginning. I just love the guy. If you knew Bob, you're gonna love him. Really, he's just that kind of guy. I know you hear it sounds cliche-ish, I guess, but that's the kind of man he was. Just a deluxe human being. I'm going to really miss him. He was one of the good guys in pro wrestling. And just a sweetheart of a human being. And when we travel the southeast, he knew all the good places to eat. And that was a valuable commodity to have, all the good places to eat. But he was what a swell guy, just a good human being.
Jim, we know when Caudle leaves WCW in '91, he's hired by Jim Cornette to become the voice of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. You did you bump into Bob and Smoky Mountain as well?
I don't know. Probably somewhere in that area. I did. I'm guessing. You know, I never went out of my way to avoid Bob because he was just such a good guy and good to be around. Uh, I loved him. I just he always knew what you're going to get with Bob, and he's just a good human being, a good man. And I just it's just hard to say how my career would have been without Bob Caudle in it at some point because he was that influential to me.
Jim, we know that WCW was a turbulent company in 1991. They had lots of bumps in the road that year. But were you surprised when they didn't renew Bob Caudle's contract and he was on the outside looking in WCW? Because as a fan, it seems like that would have been kind of a shocking thing. I mean, just think about how long he had been a part of the previous organization. And I realize it's a Turner run org now, but that feels like a pretty major departure, almost like when, Bobby left the WWF once upon a time, except Caudle had been here for much longer. What do you remember about that, if anything, Jim?
I thought it was somewhat abrupt, Conrad. Somewhat abrupt. Surprised me, quite frankly. I thought it was a little too much. So, obviously, with my tone, I didn't agree with it. But announcers have been treated that way for years, forever. When things are not quite right, the announcers get blamed, which is kind of stupid, but it is what it is. So anyway, I don't know. I just move on. Move on, my friend. Move on.
Mike, when you think about his WCW departure in '91, like I'll admit, as a kid, I'm a 10-year-old fan. I don't know Bob Caudle outside of being the guy who voiced WCW TV because I didn't grow up on the stuff. But now as an adult, first through tape trading and then, of course, through classics and then later the WWE Network, I've been able to catch up on a lot of old Mid-Atlantic and NWA and certainly JCP stuff. And you realize and recognize how valuable he was to that organization. What do you remember about his departure in '91 and how big of a deal that was within sort of the old school NWA community?
I remember people talking about it like where'd he go? But I don't remember there being any sort of big pushback to it. I kind of liken it to when WCW let beautiful Bobby Eaton go later on, where it was like, why would you do that? And kind of question it and shake your head at it. But I don't remember there being like a big pushback or anybody being like really horrified the way they would, if somebody was real, if suddenly Michael Cole or was abruptly removed or Tony Schiavone was abruptly removed from TV for no reason. I'm sure there'd be a pushback now because of the way social media is. I don't remember there being any big sort of massive reaction to Bob being gone other than confusion of people being like, this is kind of dumb. Where did he go? Because even like when he was working on the secondary shows for WCW with Lance Russell, they elevated those shows together. Like that was such a fun, unique team. Like the two kindly uncles of pro wrestling together, bantering back and forth. It was almost, like a Lewis and Allen sort of deal. And I'm dating myself there. Sorry. But I don't recall there being any big sort of pushback other than, Bob Caudle moved on. And I think that's probably what most fans in the moment really thought, even the hardcore fans, like, oh, Bob just moved on to do something else. And then shortly thereafter, he was on Smoky Mountain with Dutch Mantell. So I think fans just assumed, oh, he just moved from one place to the other, not realizing, it was a step down from a major contract to probably work in day-to-day events.
I do want to ask, you've been friendly with him for a long time. Did he keep up with modern wrestling at all, as best you know, Mike?
Bob, no, I don't think he really watched the modern product. Maybe he saw it in passing. I think like the later the later years, he just spent time with his family, especially, he was with his wife, Jackie. They got married when I think they were 18 or 19 years old. They were together for like 74, 75. I want to say even maybe 76 years before her passing earlier this year. And if you were anywhere around them when they were at like the Charlotte conventions, they were just like this very cute, kindly couple who would kind of bicker back and forth playfully, and they were just happy to be around each other. And, I just think Bob sort of just enjoyed life and enjoyed being with, he had so many grandkids and great grandchildren. I think he just got the chance to really enjoy, just the legacy that he left behind with his family, which to me is far more important than the legacy he left in wrestling. But I don't think he was involved with the modern day professional wrestling at all. I always thought it was a shame. I thought WWF should have put him, WWE, excuse me, should have put him under like some sort of stipend and did interviews with him and had him do voiceovers or something, even if it was for the WWE network, because why would you not use that resource? And I know it's, there's like a separation of church and state, especially with the old ownership, and maybe with the new ownership now, of these were the people we made them, and these are the people who are on the outside. But, in a modern day world where, they talked about New Jack passing away and Jay Briscoe passing away, I'm shocked at this point, we're almost like 5-6 days in, that WWE hasn't acknowledged his passing at all, either on their website or their social media, or on, maybe they'll do it on SmackDown this week, but as of right now, they haven't acknowledged it. And to me, that's sad, because how do you not celebrate one of the best important announcers of all time? And I know there's a passage of time and a long time since he's been on TV, but, you should still embrace your history. But I don't think Bob was all up to date. Like, he probably knew who John Cena was. I don't know that if he watched the TV shows, he would know who everybody was, or he could talk in great detail about the storylines, but maybe in passing he would watch it. But in my conversations with him, it was always about things that he had experienced, not things he was watching today.
All right, guys, it's time to enter the room. Dick first. Blue Chew is not just a tablet. It's a cheat code for your crotch. Stronger, harder, longer lasting. Like somebody gave your downstairs a pep talk and a gym membership, Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for better sex. I got to tell you, I tried Blue Chew and now my hog has a zip code and voting rights. Guys, we're not just talking about your performance. We're talking about your legacy, or your third leg, a C. Give our group chat something to talk about. Nothing makes you more of a legend than a little Blue Chew. Go discover your options right now at bluechew.com. And boy, do we have a special deal for our listeners. As always, get your first month of Blue Chew free. Just use the promo code JR at checkout and pay $5 for shipping. That's it. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head on over to bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And a big thanks to Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. And JR's hog. Come on now. Blue Chew's been with us since day one. Find out why. Try it for yourself. Go right now to bluechew.com. Use the promo code JR. You mentioned his wife, Jim. Unbelievably, Bob and his lovely bride, Jackie, were married 76 years. That's got to be the longest marriage in the history of professional wrestling, don't you think, Jim?
Yeah, that's a milestone, no doubt about it.
Of course, you mentioned that she passed away in April of this year, so I'm sure that they're glad to be reunited today. You mentioned they had a bunch of grandchildren. I want to shout them out: 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and 12 great grandchildren. And we even saw, Bob's family get a little bit of a shout out last night on Dynamite. I thought Tony Schiavone did a very amazing tribute to the late great Bob Caudle. Did you see that, Mike? And what did you think of Schiavone's tribute?
I thought it was just pure class. And Tony worked with him, especially in the early era of Tony's career, and it came from Tony's heart and soul. And I thought, obviously it's TBS that they're on, which Bob was on TBS for quite some time. I thought that it was the right move to make. I thought it was so classy, and it to me, something like that, where you're just going to take a moment to give back to someone who laid the groundwork for what you're doing today, it just makes your product better. It makes people want to appreciate what you do more. And I think it was the right thing to do, not for pro wrestling or not for anybody's ego, but for the Caudle family, so that they know, like, hey, everything that my great grandfather did, my grandfather did, my father did, all that time that he put in, it meant something. It's not just forgotten with the passage of time, and that his life meant something to the industry that he worked in. I can't think of a better gift than the gift that Tony Schiavone and AEW gave Bob and his family last night. I thought it was absolutely class.
It was a really special moment, maybe one of my favorite moments of the night. And it was an incredible show, action packed. It was the go home episode of Dynamite, but Tony Khan still took time out to allow that tribute from Tony Schiavone. And I thought they hit a home run. Jim, did you have a chance to catch Schiavone's tribute last night on Dynamite?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Very timely. Very timely. Made sense. I'm glad he did it.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Jim, is, a lot of, pro wrestling announcers have been over the top at times, and it feels like Caudle is from a bygone era. He was presented as Mike described him at PWInsider.com, journalist first, performer second. He never overshadowed the wrestlers. He never inserted himself into the angles. He never strayed from his mission to bring the action home to the fans, who he addressed constantly and sincerely. That was part of the charm of his credibility and his personality, is that he didn't try to overshadow. He was trying to just present it, but he was never involved in any angles. Do you think anything like that could exist today, Jim? Is WWE, in your opinion, trying to get more towards that? Or is it just a bygone era and we're never going to see that sort of broadcaster again in the game?
I hope you're wrong. I hope that we are going to see it. I'm not big on announcers being performers. It just doesn't. It hasn't worked out in my career. So anyway, I'm not big into that, Conrad, as you know. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. We get our roles mixed up. I don't. It's crazy to me.
Mike, it tickled me 3 years ago and change. I was silly enough to promote my one and only wrestling event ever. I wanted to tap into the nostalgia of Jim Crockett Promotions. We were able to recreate the old TBS set with Tony Schiavone and David Crockett on the call, but it felt incomplete without Bob Caudle. And I love that with David Crockett and your help, we were able to sort of bring that together. The idea that we started that pay-per-view with Bob Caudle and ended that pay-per-view with Bob Caudle, at the time, I just felt like it made sense. But looking back now, I'm so glad we did it that way. Aren't you, Mike?
Yeah, like I mentioned that, I never publicly talked about this until after Bob passed away, but I was so humbled when you reached out to me and was like, we're going to do a segment with Bob. What do you think he should say? And like, without even thinking, I think I was out and I said to you, like, give me 5 minutes. And I typed it up on my phone with like my thumbs. It was like the only thing of worth I ever typed on my phone. And I was like, I know his voice because I know, what I would expect out of Bob Caudle from many decades of watching him. And I remember like typing it up and thinking, this could very well be his last appearance on television. So we should make sure he gets a chance to say thank you to everybody. And I remember adding like that note, like, make sure Bob gets to say how much the audience is meant to him, because, as an announcer, he gets to say so long for now, but he never gets to say thank you. Like that wasn't his role. That wasn't what you did. And I remember like watching it on the pay-per-view, and it was like an edited down version. And I remember texting you going, Bob's goodbye wasn't in there. And then like when his birthday came, you put the entire thing up on social media. And that was the first time I heard the entire bit as it, instead of being edited for the different nuances that you used it on the Flair's Last Match pay-per-view, and thinking, did he just memorize and recite everything that I wrote? Like, it was like mind blowing that this had happened to me. And like, I was so humbled that you were asked. And like, to this day, like, I can go through, I got to do all these things in wrestling, and they're all blessings. It's all a lucky job to have, and I'm lucky to have it. And I love writing and I love wrestling and all that. But that one, because Bob meant so much to me growing up, and, that moment, I was there at the Hall of Heroes when Greg Price promoted that as part of the Mid-Atlantic Legends Convention, where Bob came back after having a couple of heart attacks, I want to say in 2007. And he got like this big 5-minute standing ovation at that Hall of Heroes banquet, and being there and feeling that sort of energy and that love for him. I just wanted him to be able to kind of take the love that the audience had and say thank you back. And I'm glad that he got that chance. And I'm blessed to say I had one tiny little iota of a piece of that. And a big part of that was you, and obviously David, and, all the credit should go to Bob. But man, we're so lucky we had that chance for him to appear on television or broadcast with streaming, whatever you want to call it, one last time, because that's someone who, in my mind, should have always been celebrated and should have been used in some capacity by someone, whether it be WWE or whoever. And it's unfortunate that that didn't happen. I don't know that he was ever upset about that. I think he just like, my time is up and I've moved on. But I'm glad that you got, as part of that show, because you tapped into so much of the nostalgia of what Jim Crockett Promotions and what Ric Flair meant to people in the 70s and the 80s, especially, that Bob got to be a small part of that. Because, when I think of Bob, I think of the NWA. And as much as I would think of the Horsemen or Dusty or Jim or Tony Schiavone or Nikita Koloff or anybody else, I think of Bob immediately when I think National Wrestling Alliance. So I love that he got to, even if I wasn't involved in that little bit that we did, that you did, I should say, I would have loved seeing him, and I would have popped huge just watching him pop up on my television. So I loved it. I thought it was a great move, and I'm very, very blessed that you invited me to help out with that.
No, I didn't do it, Mike. We did it. It was your words, and Caudle hit a home run. It was a special moment. Life happens fast. 1 minute you're driving home after work. The next, you see flashing lights in your rearview mirror. Your heart skips. Your hands tighten on the wheel, and you start asking yourself, what do I do now? That's when you need someone on your side. And with the Legal Buddy app, you can connect with a local attorney in seconds, not hours, not days, but right when you need help. Whether it's a DWI, a car accident, a criminal charge, or even just a traffic ticket, the Legal Buddy app puts real legal support right in your pocket. Imagine having an attorney on call, ready to guide you through some of life's most stressful moments. This isn't a call center. It's not a waiting game. It's direct access to a lawyer who understands your situation and your community, and one who can step in right away. Think about it. When trouble knocks, do you want to face it alone? Or would you rather have the confidence of knowing a professional is already on your side? That's the peace of mind that Legal Buddy gives you. And here's how easy it is. Just download the Legal Buddy app right now at legalbuddyapp.com. Register today and use the referral code LEGAL for your chance to win a $250 Amazon gift card. Life is unpredictable. Accidents happen. Tickets happen. Mistakes happen. But when they do, you don't have to go through it alone. The Legal Buddy app, always on your side. Download the app today and enter the referral code LEGAL. One of the things that Tony said last night, JR, was that if there's ever an a Hall of Fame for announcers, Bob Caudle should go in. I don't think anybody would argue that. Do you think that WWE should consider putting him in next year's Hall of Fame class? I mean, obviously I would have loved to have seen him on stage, but better late than never. He belongs. He's worthy, right?
Absolutely. In my opinion, Bob Caudle's worthy of any Hall of Fame that there is in wrestling television. He just is. He's earned it. He deserves it. And I'd love to see him alongside anybody that I'm in 3. And I think he should be in at least 1. God Almighty, he's great. So, acknowledge greatness and don't dwell over politics, please.
I do want to ask you, Mike, you mentioned that WWE, as of this recording, they've yet to acknowledge the passing of Bob Caudle, but we know what a Jim Crockett Promotions fan that Triple H was. We know he looked up to Ric Flair and to Harley Race. It does feel like Triple H may make sure that Bob Caudle is on the list for WWE's Hall of Fame next year. Do you think that's a real possibility, Mike?
I would think at least for the legacy wing that they do, where they, there's some older names that they add in that aren't part of the official presentation of the Hall of Fame beyond the little video package. I would think, why wouldn't you put Bob in? And it could be like maybe they're waiting for Michael Cole to talk about Bob Caudle on Friday on SmackDown. That's always a possibility. Maybe, they felt and I don't know. No one said yay or nay to me on this. Maybe they thought, Madison Square Garden, it's John Cena's last show. Let's leave it for Friday. Maybe Joe Tessitore is not the guy to be talking about the history of pro wrestling. I don't know. I'm just surprised that they didn't even make an acknowledgement on the social media or the WWE website, because he's all over the network, whether it's, being with Jim at the Great American Bash in '89 or some of the Mid-Atlantic stuff or the Turner, the stuff that was on TBS on Saturday nights. Like, he's all over that. You would think that somebody there, especially, with some of the minds that are behind the scenes, whether it's Paul Levesque or Ben Brown or somebody would have went, oh, you know what? We should acknowledge this because there are going to be fans talking about this. And I think maybe it just was a busy week and it just wasn't a priority yet. But I'm hoping by the time if they don't acknowledge him by Friday on SmackDown, I think somebody definitely screwed up there. And it honestly, maybe it's, the difference between TKO owning it versus Vince McMahon, but it would come off really, really poor for them if they don't. I'm not saying like they got to have a huge video package, but they should at least acknowledge him on camera or in passing while they're doing commentary. And if they don't, I think it speaks very ill of the company as a whole.
Mike, when I think of voices from back in that era in professional wrestling, I think of Gordon Soley, I think of Lance Russell, and I think of Bob Caudle. But the career trajectory of Lance Russell and Bob Caudle, with their background in news and then transitioning to studio wrestling, it feels very similar. Do you draw any other comparisons between Lance Russell and Bob Caudle? What made them similar, and maybe more importantly, what made them different, Mike?
Well, I think with Lance was more of like the host, and he'd be more interacting with the wrestlers. Oh, come on now, Jerry. No, you shouldn't be doing that. We're yelling at Terry Funk to stop cursing and before they tape the empty arena match. Like things like that. Lance was a little bit more forceful. Bob, I don't want to say was passive, but Bob was the observer on the street reporting what he was seeing. Lance was more of the host who was facilitating everything. And Lance was but where they were very similar was they were each the straight man in the interviews. They'd set things up and they'd let the wrestlers be louder than life and bombastic. And, and whether it was the heel or the babyface, they were the ones to be straightforward and kind of facilitate and question, especially the heels, what their mindset was. But by stepping back and kind of being the gray, they allowed everybody else to be the color and to be the pizzazz. I don't know how much of this stuff's up on the WWE Network or Peacock or whatever it's on now, but those old WCW shows where Lance and Bob would kind of go back and forth. I love those shows just to listen to the commentary because to me, I thought there was I don't want to say gimmick because it sounds bad, but I thought it was such a unique pairing and such a fun destination commentary team to listen to that I would go out of my way to watch those shows just because they were announcing. And sometimes what they were announcing was not like the A team shows or the major angles or the major shows. Those were usually saved for TBS on Saturday nights, but they were just entertaining listening to them. And I can only imagine what it was like for the two of them to be on the road together, because everyone talks about the crazy wrestler experiences on the road. But when you think about the announcers, no matter where they went, they had to have been recognized by wrestling fans. So there must have been some really crazy and unique experiences for the announcers that probably are lost to the passage of time that most of us will never hear about.
I wanted to talk about those interviews. You said that, he was just sort of introducing them and he was the observer. And when you look back at the success that Jim Crockett Promotions had, it wasn't just the promotion that enjoyed success. It was the talent. And it was a who's who that Bob Caudle was there for, whether it was Blackjack Mulligan or Ric Flair or the Andersons or Ricky Steamboat. But I think most people listening to this, at least at one point, considered Ric Flair to be one of, if not the greatest talker in the game. And Ric Flair actually took to Twitter after Bob passed, and he wrote, "Bob Caudle was a great friend and someone who helped me develop my interview skills. You were a great man, Bob, and you will be remembered forever as one of the greatest announcers of all time. I cherish all the time that I got to spend with you. Rest in peace, my dear friend." But when you've got a guy like Ric Flair saying, "You helped me develop my interview skills," that's about as high a praise as you can get from Ric Flair. Don't you think, Jim?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Rick was attentive. He learned, paid attention. So, it's good. Giving back, it's important. But Rick had a natural gift to gab, but he paid attention. He learned, and you see where it got him. Best of all time.
Whenever you think about the great announcer quotes through the years, Mike, a lot of people would point to Tony Schiavone and they would maybe tongue-in-cheek say something about butts and seats or greatest night in the history of our great sport. And of course, JR is just a living quote machine. I mean, they're using his voice on soccer highlights all over the world. But for Bob Caudle, it was always kind of the intro and the exit for me. Is that what stands out the most to you as well, Mike?
Yeah, like I said, when I went to that first Charlotte gathering in 2004, like when he and David got on stage and they did the whole intro and the outro, it was like, man, like that's all I wanted as a young kid was to be able to be in that studio and hear that myself. So to see that, it was kind of like wish fulfillment for me as a, as a younger adult. We were talking 2004, so it was a while back. But yeah, I think a lot of that had to do with, these sort of familiarity of, so long for now, just I don't even think it was meant to be a catchphrase. I think it just became something that was comfortable for him, and it just became a familiarity. And it was just something that he used, like you put on a glove, just like, Joey Styles' "Oh My God" got used. I think it just ended up being something that developed. I don't think it was done on purpose. But having those things just, it gives you that, hearing that voice and hearing those words just gives you like that warm, rosy, nostalgic feeling for the things that you loved as a kid. And I think, the one thing that I do love about the streaming era is if there was something that you loved, whether it's a TV show or a piece of music or a movie, somewhere you can find it. Somewhere it's out there and it will live forever. And that's different than any other time period that we've ever lived in as a society. And I think there's something that's nice about that if you're having a bad day and you need something to make you feel better, and Mid-Atlantic Wrestling was your thing, or Jim Crockett Promotions was your thing, you can track it down and bring you back mentally and emotionally to a time period where you were a little bit more excitable, a little bit younger, a little bit happier, or raise your spirits the same way they say music kind of helps you file your emotions and get it in check so that you can reshuffle your brain. I think the things that we all love that we're nostalgic for, to be able to go back, the ability to go back and revisit them, helps us in some way that we don't even think about, that previous generations didn't have that opportunity to do unless they were, crazed VCR fanatics who taped everything and traded tapes like a lot of us did generations ago.
Well, we're going to miss Bob Caudle for a long time. I greatly appreciate all the time today, Mike. I love reading your stuff over at PWInsider. Where can everybody else keep up with what you got going on these days?
Yeah, you can check us out at PWInsider. I'm on social media at Mike PWInsider. And if I can just take 1 second of your time, we did have another loss this week. George Tahinos, who is a great photographer that I knew from like 1994 on. He helped everybody from the WWE website to Dark Side of the Ring to every independent wrestling promotion you could think of. He passed away last week after a cardiac event. His family has a GoFundMe up that is assisting him, or I should say assisting them in his burial and his memorial and his services. So if anybody has the opportunity and can do so, please track that down and help his family out if they can. He was a great guy, and the pro wrestling world is going to miss him, and so is all his family and friends. And, Conrad, Jim, I really thank you for letting me come on. I love Bob Caudle with all my heart. And after meeting him, I loved him a million times more. And I have so many great memories of talking with him and Jackie at these different conventions in Charlotte over the years, and infinite amount of memories of listening to him call wrestling. And my favorite show of all time, my favorite pay-per-view is Great American Bash 89. Even more so, like someone's going to say, oh, ECW, Mike's an ECW guy. Great American Bash 89, Funk and Flair, and then Sting and Muta getting involved. That's like my favorite thing I ever saw on pay-per-view. It's my favorite show of all time. And Jim and Bob were the soundtrack for that. And I don't ever forget that, because they made that show so much more better. I'm terrible English. I'm sorry. So much better. They accentuated it so much more than even the great wrestling that night was. And I remember it was so great that even Jim was losing his voice at the end of the night. And he and Bob were in the middle of the chaos of Funk and Sting and Flair and Muta brawling all over the place. And like, all that stuff just makes me smile. And it made me fall so much more intensely in love with pro wrestling. And I don't know that I'd be doing what I'd be doing now if it hadn't been for memories and moments like that. And I cannot say thank you to Bob Caudle for what he gave to the pro wrestling industry enough. And I say the same thing to you, Jim. You know that. And Conrad, thank you for humbling me once again by asking me to come on and talk about Bob. And may his memory live forever, and may his family be at peace and know how much he was loved for what he did in the pro wrestling world.
Thank you for all the time, Mike, and thank you for reminding us that there was another loss this week. We'll be sure to link that GoFundMe in the description for today's show.
Thank you.
I grew up, as you know, a huge ECW fan, and I recognize his photos a mile away. I know exactly what I'm looking for, and I thought it was really nice to see guys like Taz tweeting out some of those old promo photos and putting them on his Instagram story to pay tribute, because I don't think that the photographers in pro wrestling are given enough love either. You know, they're one of the guys behind the scenes, but we all have these iconic photographs, but very rarely do we celebrate the folks who actually were on the other side of the camera. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. We'll make sure that GoFundMe is linked down below in the description for today's show. And Mike, thanks for all the time. We love you. We love PWInsider, and we love Bob Caudle. I think it would be fitting if we aired a little clip now of the last experience that Bob had in pro wrestling. I can't believe this is real. I was so fortunate, along with Mike and JR, to be a part of Ric Flair's last match, and we'll share that with you now, and we'll be right back.
For many decades, whether it be in Raleigh, Techwood Drive Studios in Atlanta, or all points in between, the magic of Jim Crockett Promotions was thanks to all of the great competitors in the ring, and thanks to all of you many fans. From the Charlotte Coliseum to New York City to Los Angeles and all points in between, the majesty of the World's Heavyweight Championship, the sheer perfection of athletic competition, and the grueling nature of personal grudges being settled once and for all have captivated wrestling fans the world over. Those memories live on as immortal legends, myths of a time long gone but never forgotten. Names such as Dusty Rhodes, the Road Warriors, Sergeant Slaughter, Terry Funk, Harley Race, Ricky Steamboat, Sting, Greg Valentine, the Midnight Express, Roddy Piper, and of course, the dreaded Four Horsemen. They all stepped inside the squared circle to battle and prove that they were the all-time best professional wrestlers in the world. Tonight we celebrate the past and pay tribute to all those great moments while making new indelible memories as the Nature Boy Ric Flair walks that aisle for the very last time. For one night, we all step back in time to embrace everything we all loved about Jim Crockett Promotions. And for one moment in time, we all get to be home together again. So, welcome home. And finally, I want to thank all you fans for allowing me to come into your home over these many, many years. It's been an outstanding time, and I appreciate all of you. And I want you to know I love you all. And now it's time to go ringside. And my wrestling announcing partners, David Crockett and Tony Schiavone.
Got to talk about our friends over at StopBox. Listen up. If you own a handgun for self-defense, your storage likely fits into one of two frustrating categories. It's either locked away, meaning it's safe, but it's out of reach in case of an emergency, or it's unsecured, which means you've left it vulnerable to anyone. StopBox USA saw the problem and designed a groundbreaking solution known as the StopBox Pro. And with the StopBox Pro, you'll never have to choose between security and readiness again. Its ingenious push-button locking system gives you fast, reliable access when every second matters without the hassle of keys or reliance on batteries. It's 100% mechanical, so it works every time, no power needed. And with the StopBox USA, you can finally have both security and readiness. The StopBox Pro's mechanical keyless system allows for fast, secure access without the risk of fumbling for keys when every second counts. It's also battery-free, so you never have to worry about your lock not working. And with the holiday coming up, there's never been a better time to upgrade your home security or give the gift of peace of mind to someone you care about. Whether it's for your own nightstand or a loved one who takes safety seriously, the StopBox Pro delivers the perfect balance of protection and preparedness. All of the StopBox products are proudly made here in the USA, so you don't have to worry about any sort of tariffs or anything like that. And the TSA has approved the StopBox Pro. Yeah. The StopBox Pro is TSA compliant, just in time for your travel this holiday season. And if you're looking for that perfect gift, they've got more than just the StopBox Pro. They've got the vehicle safe, the chamber lock, and other essential gear designed to help you be more prepared and protected wherever you are. You see, the holidays just got a little safer and a whole lot more affordable. Right now, for a limited time, our listeners are getting this crazy good deal. Not only can you get 10% off your entire order when you use the code JR10 at StopBoxUSA.com, but check this out. They're giving you a buy one, get one free on their StopBox Pro. That's right. You get 10% off and a free StopBox Pro when you use the code JR10 at StopBoxUSA.com. All right, folks, we're back, and we are excited to be talking about a big pay-per-view weekend. It feels like AEW always over-delivers on pay-per-view, and man, they're coming off an absolute barn burner Dynamite. It was a combination, Jim, of a Dynamite and a Collision, and we've got a Collision course set for the world title this weekend, this Saturday night. Samoa Joe, Hangman Adam Page in a steel cage match. The title is on the line. I'm fired up for this, man. I'm looking forward to it. Can you pick a winner?
No, I can't. I guess I'd hang my hat with the Page, the champion, but for Samoa Joe to walk away with the title would not surprise me.
That's one of the great things about Samoa Joe, I think, is that he's such a credible opponent that you can almost slide him in for a world title shot at any point against anyone, and people are going to pay attention. I know I'm going to be paying attention to that one. I'm going to go ahead and go with Hangman Adam Page. It feels like Hangman Adam Page is going to pull out the victory, at least to me. We want to know from you guys, who do you think is going to win? Let us know in the comments below. But another match that was made official just last night as we're recording, Jim, was the no-holds-barred match between Jon Moxley and Kyle O'Reilly. Of course, Kyle O'Reilly had the big victory, and you want to talk about a breakout performance. He's a made man on the heels of Blood and Guts. But now you're in singles competition in a no-holds-barred match with Jon Moxley. Moxley has been a purveyor of violence, to say the least, on pay-per-view. It feels like if there's something that can inflict damage, he's going to use it to his advantage. He's got the advantage, you got to think, coming here one-on-one with Kyle O'Reilly. It would be an upset, in my opinion, if Kyle O'Reilly got Moxley to submit again. Can he do it, or is it Moxley's night, Jim?
I got to hang my hat with Moxley until it's proven wrong. I like O'Reilly's acceleration, but Moxley's still the guy. But I will say it'll be physical and fun to watch. But Moxley, I think, wins a knockdown drag out without question.
We know it's going to be a knockdown drag out anytime Darby Allin enters the arena. 2 weeks ago, we saw him thrown off a cage, or off a stage rather, through a flaming table. Pac looks like a completely different human being. A pretty chilling promo as we watched last night on Dynamite. You never know what to expect with Darby Allin, but the last time we saw him, he was flying through a flaming table, Jim. What do you expect with Pac and Darby Allin this weekend at Full Gear?
Well, enough of the flaming tables, for God's sakes. I think that. But I don't put any limits on what these guys could do when you involve Darby Allin. He has no boundaries whatsoever. So we'll see how it works out. But I don't put any governors or any boundaries on these two guys whatsoever.
A lot of people think that Kyle Fletcher is the brightest young star in AEW. He's going to be defending his TNT championship in a no DQ match against Mark Briscoe. I have to admit, I'm a huge Mark Briscoe fan. He might actually be my favorite television wrestler. I think he's the ultimate utility player. You can slide him into any segment, and it's going to be fun, from the silly to the serious. But there's going to be no laughing matter when they're doing a no DQ match. And the stakes are high. If Fletcher wins, then not only does he retain the TNT title and set a record for the most wins during a singular title reign for the TNT title, but if Fletcher is successful, Mark Briscoe must join the Don Callis family. That doesn't seem all that likely to me. I would pick Mark Briscoe in an upset victory here over Kyle Fletcher. What say you, Jim?
I don't want any part of Mark Briscoe or Briscoe's getting involved in something that he didn't need to be involved in my opinion. I don't get it. I don't get the involvement in that regard. So you know, it makes the picture more complex, no doubt about that, but it's kind of crazy.
I'm pretty excited about the $1 Million Trios match. We've seen some interesting exchanges with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and the Don Callis family. So we'll see Kenny Omega and Jurassic Express, that's Jungle Jack Perry and Luchasaurus, taking on the Young Bucks and Josh Alexander. I think this is obviously going to be a great match. I mean, you've got some of the best wrestlers in the world here. I still think Josh Alexander is criminally underrated. We don't need to brag on Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks anymore. I think Jurassic Express, man, they have quickly become, I mean, just right back into settling into one of the more popular tag teams in AEW. So you got a lot of star power in this one. And yes, there will be good matches, but I think this is going to be heavy on story. Do you think the Elite could be getting the band back together? Will the Young Bucks join Kenny Omega? What do you expect this weekend, Jim?
Fast paced, a lot of movement and activity. It's a lot of great moving parts, great elements, without a doubt. So I'm all for that. I think it'll be a hell of a match. It could be match of the night, quite frankly. And if it is, so be it. I'll be watching.
The match I think that could be match of the night is for the AEW tag team titles. Two of my absolute favorite tag teams of all time. Everybody knows how talented FTR are, not only in NXT or WWE, but certainly in AEW and Ring of Honor. But this newly formed tag team that's been enjoying so much success to the point that they're coming in as the champs. Brodito, that's Brody King and Bandito. Man, they say sometimes in MMA, styles make fights. This is an interesting pairing, and I can't get enough of it. I'm looking forward to this one. I don't know what I expect, but I expect this to be a scene stealer. Who do you think gets their hand raised at the end of this one, Jim?
I think the champs. I think the champs come out of there with a victory. Boy, I love good tag team wrestling, and it seems like we're getting back to that a little bit. But I love real good tag team wrestling, and some of the best tag team wrestling I ever saw was in Mid-Atlantic, quite frankly. But there's a science to it. There's a skill set to it, and I think it's just great. I really do love the treatment and how it's presented.
You said it's going to be the champs retaining. There's a lot of champs when it comes to the ladies. Chris Statlander has the AEW Women's World Championship. Mercedes Moné has every other women's belt in the world. And they're going to be facing off for Chris Statlander's AEW World title. This is going to be an interesting one. You know, we saw on Dynamite, Mercedes left Chris Statlander laying. Normally, when you're watching a program on a go-home show, that means the other side wins, but it almost feels unfathomable that Mercedes Moné would lose here. I'm going to go with the upset, even though it shouldn't feel like an upset since she's the champ. I think Statlander retains. What do you expect, Jim?
It's hard to figure this one out because of the back and forth. This woman's got multiple titles. I don't get that. I'm a little confused over this storyline, quite frankly. So I can't. Statlander is a player in this equation. I just don't know to what degree. I'm confused, and maybe that's good.
I'm pulling for Statlander. I think she's going to pull it off. I also want to know if there is going to be a pre-show match with the El Sky team versus the Don Callis family, and the Don Callis family on that day will be Hechicero, Takeshita, and Okada. No disrespect to the El Sky team. I mean, you got Mystico, you got Neon, you got Dorada, you got a lot of talent on that side. But this is so heavy on story. I mean, even last night as we're watching Dynamite, we see Don Callis as he's running through who all's going to be in the match. When he's sort of hyping up Okada's grinning ear to ear. Same for Hechicero. But when Don Callis announced that Takeshita, the IWGP champion, would also be involved in the match, the entire demeanor changed with Okada. It's been made painfully clear this is going to be a collision course for Takeshita and Okada. that feels like that's a worthwhile main event at some point. We know that Okada is the opponent for Tanahashi in Wrestle Kingdom. Do you think there's a chance that we see Okada and Takeshita headline World's End next month for AEW? What do you think?
It seems like it's rushing it a little bit, but maybe not. I want to see that match. No doubt about that. The match itself will be classic.
Well, we know that AEW always delivers on pay-per-view. There's going to be more than one classic this weekend. We want to hear from you. Who do you think are going to win these matches? What match is going to steal the show? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, as always, you can catch this on pay-per-view with HBO Max, with Amazon, or anywhere else you enjoy pay-per-view. But even if you've missed some AEW TV here or there, you don't have to see it all to enjoy a great night of wrestling. Full Gear, man, it's got to be one of the more underrated AEW pay-per-views, but it feels like when it comes to these pay-per-views, nobody does it better than AEW.
Right.
It's going to be a long night of wrestling. I'm fired up for this Saturday, Jim. How about you?
No, I think it's going to be a real good show. No doubt about that. So key matchups I'm anxious to experience, no doubt.
Well, a lot of our listeners are going to be curious. You know, normally you get your number called on pay-per-view day. Are you going to be doing pay-per-view duty this month, or will you resume it next month, or what is your plan to return to AEW at this point?
Probably next month. It's my assumption. Next month, and but I'm going to be watching it for damn sure. It's got some compelling matchups, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we know World's End is going to be here before you know it. It's going to be here as a reminder at Hoffman Estates in the suburbs of Chicago right there. We've had so much fun in that building. The Now Arena. It's happening 2 days after Christmas, December 27th, 2025. Make plans to join there. Tickets are on sale now at AEWTIX.com. You'll be able to see JR there. And Jim, this time next week is WrestleCade. I know once upon a time you were booked for WrestleCade. Do you think at this point you'll be in attendance in Winston-Salem, or are you going to sit this one out?
No, I'll be there. I'll be there. Lawler and I both will be there.
Man, that's so exciting. Well, everybody I know is going to be at WrestleCade. We hope you are too. Be sure to see JR and the King at WrestleCade.com. They're going to be in Winston-Salem. It's a who's who of professional wrestling. Almost every star and legend you know will be there. So go grab yourself some space. I know it's really, really limited. WrestleCade.com is where you can get all the information. Jim, that means I'm going to see you next week. Obviously, we're going to do a podcast together. I know we had talked this week about having you watch Samoa Joe and Kenta Kobashi. We'll try to do that next week. I felt like this week it made more sense to pay a little tribute to Bob Caudle. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's never a finer man in pro wrestling than Bob Caudle. I loved him. He's going to be really, really missed. And that's just not hyperbole. He's that good a guy. And I love Bob Caudle. And I'll always love Bob Caudle.
Well, Mr. Caudle, we loved your work here on Earth. I'm glad you're reunited with your lovely bride of 76 years, Miss Jackie. And, well, I guess we've said it all. So long for now.
Thanks, Bob. I love you.
All right, real quick, I want to remind everybody, especially this time of year, did you know at SaveWithConrad.com you can skip your next 2 house payments? That's right. You'll get a cheaper monthly payment and no payments until next year. How about a little Christmas vacation from house payments? That's right. No payments in November or December at SaveWithConrad.com.